This is my communication model project. To start off, what is communication? So communication is defined as the transactional use of symbols influenced, guided, and understood in the context of relationships. And this is a definition defined from the textbook. So what it kind of means when it says symbols is it can kind of range from anything from images and gestures to things like words and text, anything that you associate a specific meaning to through cultural and relational context can be considered a symbol. So ultimately, everything is a symbol because everything in itself is a valid form of communication. So why is communication so important? We use communication to exchange thoughts and ideas with each other through a variety of platforms, things like speech, text, writing, symbols, etc. It's very important to understand the inner workings of this process so that we can communicate effectively and efficiently. Communication helps us analyze each other and the world around us, and effective communication betters relationships, increases engagement, and provides clarity. So communication makes us learn more about ourselves and the world around us, and it's something that we use every day, which is vital to building relationships and bond with other people, as effective communication is key not only to building relationships but also maintaining any relationship, both personally and professionally. So some methods of communication, the three models that we discussed were the action model of communication, which is sending a message whether or not the message is received. The interaction model, which is the exchange of information between two individuals, so kind of like a back and forth, but nothing new has been created. And then transactional model of communication, where it's the construction of shared meanings and understandings between two or more individuals. So you are ultimately creating something, whether it be creating new feelings, creating new perspectives, new portions of your identity. Something is there after this transactional method of communication that was not there before, and that is what defines this method of communication compared to the other two. So this is just a little graphic that I picked out. So in the transactional method, both parties, the two or more parties that are a part of this transactional communication, they are both the senders and the receivers. So they are the communicators as well as the listeners, which is why both sides say communicator rather than just one being communicator and one being listener or something along those lines. So they, kind of what I was mentioning before in terms of context, cultural, relational, physical and psychological, and social context, all these contexts come together and they build this co-creation and meaning which comes from this transactional method and mode of communication. It's very, very key and very vital to kind of creating something new. So we can bring our perspectives and our contextualization of certain things, and the other party can also do the same. And when we both bring different perspectives, because we obviously do not live in the same life, we have different perspectives on things, we have different social locations, which therefore can contribute to how we perceive certain things. When we bring those differing ideas and contexts together and we build off of them, we come to this co-creation of meaning, and we therefore build upon what we know together. And that is what defines the transactional method compared to the other two. So in this scenario that we created, two of my group mates, Adrian and Roy, will be having a transactional conversation. This exchange will begin by discussing the differences in opinion, and it will result in a joint decision being made, which will be both of them ultimately deciding what to do at the end of this scenario. So the dialogue that we have here is Adrian is a sender and receiver, and Roy is as well, because as I mentioned before, in the transactional method of communication, both parties, or all parties, depending on how large the group is, carry the roles of the sender and receiver. So in this dialogue, we have Adrian asking, "Hi Roy, I was wondering if you were free to work on the project next Monday. I have work from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. From Tuesday through Thursday. And then after this, Roy states, well, let me check my schedule. So after he checks his schedule, he says, on Monday, I'll be busy with other classes since it's my busy day. How about after you work on Tuesday? And Adrian says, that works for me. Let's start brainstorming for our project in the meantime and discuss ideas on Tuesday. So when we analyze this conversation, this method of communication, as small and mundane as it may seem, there's actually a lot going on here behind the scenes that we may not normally recognize unless we are specifically studying the field of communications as we are now. So in this communication, the sender and the receiver, as I mentioned before, both parties play equal roles. So Adrian is also the sender, but he's also the receiver, as well as Roy is the sender, and he's also the receiver. The message states the timing to begin working on the project, and the channel, the method by which this communication is going through, is direct, verbal, and nonverbal communication. So we have the verbal communication saying, oh, let me check my schedule. Are you free on this day? I'm busy from this time through this time. But there's also nonverbal communication in the sense that Roy is checking his schedule, and there's that waiting period in between where he says, okay, let me wait, let me look 1 second. And the act of checking the schedule is a nonverbal form of communication. It shows Adrian that he is willing to work on this project. He just needs to make sure that there are no other conflicts with his schedule in order for him to do so. The barriers and interferences is the distance between the two parties. So these two people, they must come to some sort of conclusion as to when they are free, because they have a distance between, like, physical distance in terms of they might live far from each other, they might not be able to have access to the proper resources in time, and also the distance between their schedules. So they must figure out what they want to do in a timely manner in order to make sure that this project is completed. So the distance between the parties, the fact that they must go from one place to another to get there, which kind of goes to show like why they need to compare their schedules, because they do not have equal access to each other and each other's resources. So there's an implied distance between these parties, and there are also conflicting schedules, as specifically stated in this communication. So the feedback would be providing an alternative to the sender's message. So if the sender said, are you free on this day? And then the receiver said, oh, I can't do this day, but I can do this day. That is feedback. That is providing an alternative to the message. And the context and situation would be at the University of Connecticut working on a project, as mentioned within the communication itself. So our conclusion is that while this direct communication might seem interactional as opposed to transactional, it truly is transactional. As I kind of mentioned previously, the difference between interactional and transactional is that interactional is just sort of a exchange between two parties of just like basic information. But when you really dig deep down into what's happening in this communication, it ultimately encompasses two worldviews and timelines while simultaneously working toward a common goal. The common goal being this project. We both had to work on this project when are we free. They both had two separate views, two separate times, two separate thought processes with different individual influences, which influence them into saying, I'm free on this time, I'm not free on this time. Their social locations play a very, very large role in this. But they were able to come together and create a new time that they were free so that they would be able to work on this project. And that is what makes this interaction transactional rather than interactional. At the end of the day, when you truly kind of take a step back and analyze what it means and what both parties are trying to convey. And this is our work cited. Thank you for listening.